that speaker cabinet that you just heard in action with my Marshall Silver Jubilee Reissue Mini 2525H or 8, whatever model it is, I don't know. I made that for $1.55 and it looks totally cool. The floor is uneven, so I have it on a little couple little pieces of paper. It has like neat little feet on it, and it has this really nifty kind of oxblood red grill cloth. The wood like a dark red maroon. It's really nice and solid. Totally cool. It's huge, 26 inches by 30 some odd inches high and like 16 inches or 17 inches deep. So it is big. It's just a big empty box. I made this cabinet for $1.55 and I'm going to go through the steps how I did it. Basically, I was driving down the street one day and this was on the side of the road out with the trash, and of course I backed right up, and I was like, holy cats, that's awesome. So I didn't even like really check it out. I just grabbed it figuring whatever it is I can do something with it, and I did. And the Marshall, with the cabinet that came with it, it is really bright. It has that really like high mids kind of high-end thing that just like goes right through you, and this cabinet really tames that down. As you'll hear, it still has some nice highs, but they're not as just piercing, like ear-splitting. The inside of the cabinet here had all this kind of crud. It's like almost like crepe paper. I don't want to touch it because it literally is just falling apart. So I checked online, did some research, and having insulation or padding inside the cabinet does change the sound a bit. Nobody can really decide whether it's better or worse, blah blah blah. So I grabbed some tablecloth that my mom had was sort of tossing or whatever. It had some torn and frayed edges. Cut it into pieces, stapled it down over the padding, so that keeps some of the padding. I know it's going to change the frequency, whatever, but like I was getting at before I got totally sidetracked, I'm not at all convinced that everything has to be a certain way to get a certain tone. You know, like the guitar wood has to be a certain thing, the pickups have to be a certain thing, and if you do all of these things right, you'll have a certain tone. I think it's more, sure, everything adds up, but it's really unpredictable. You can't tell what's what. So that's what I did this morning. So this is the speaker that I have. The cabinet came with a Bozak speaker and two, like, it's like a speaker with like a bridge thing here with two tweeter kind of things on it, and I traded that and got this speaker. Part number 00166643, 8 ohm. It's actually a 12.5 inch speaker, and it's used as like a bass driver. So it resonates, I did a little research, it resonates at 55 hertz, and I think it reproduces sound from 45 hertz up to 5K hertz. So it's sort of in line with the old bass speakers that people like Jimmy Page used, and they just a little more bass comes out of it. So I measured it, and the hole that's in the cabinet over here because the Bozak speaker was mounted on a square, you can sort of see, on a square piece of plywood that was then bolted on. So all I had to do was just unscrew the square piece of plywood and the whole thing came out. I'm going to mount this right to the baffle, and I measured, and it has to be like 13/16 bigger all the way around. So I'm just going to measure 4 spots around it. Position the speaker so that it's equal, so that it's lined up with those 4 little marks that I make, and then I'll know that the circle, that the speaker is centered over this circle. It's going to cut a little bit of the edge off, but again, you know what, who cares? I'm just throwing it together and we'll see what happens. So that's that. The cabinet that I got, I had to glue some of the veneer here and there on it, and it suffered some water damage. I don't know if you can see, like right here, this veneer that's actually like missing. There you go, you can see that. It actually just, you know, see, that's, did you just hear that? That was veneer that's kind of peeling off. So at some point, if this sounds really good, my hope is to sand it down, put a little wood filler in little chips and stuff that are missing, and then try my hand at Tolex covering it. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I was thinking like a red and black, like a dark red, like a blood red and black snakeskin cover would be pretty cool. But of course, only if it sounds really good. Here's the back panel, and I put a little 1/4 inch jack so I can, of course, plug a head into it. And what I did was it looks pretty good. What I did was I cut this with a 7/8 like a spade bit, drill bit, and just because that's what I had, 7/8, whatever. And here is where I actually spent some money, sadly. On the flip side, this, I actually had to buy this. What a bummer. It cost me $1.55. Bummer. Oh well. This here is, I was like walking around my basement kind of looking for something I can use for like a little panel, because of course this back piece is too thick for the output jack that I have. And to be perfectly honest, I wanted it recessed a bit so that it's easier if I was going to transport this anywhere. You don't have the little tiny, like 1/16 of an inch metal piece that tears up the upholstery in the car or whatever. So this is actually the bottom of a cigar box that my dad is always giving me old cigar boxes to see if I have any use for them, and here we are. I had a use for it, so I just kind of butcher sawed a piece off of it, and all I needed it to do was just to hold this, and then screwed it onto the back. So the inside doesn't look super great, but as you saw, the outside, that's pretty good looking and recessed. I soldered it together, and looking online, it showed Marshall seems to wire them with the negative as the sleeve on the jack, and positive is the tip. So I wired it that way. With one speaker in a cabinet, I'm not entirely sure it matters, but if I run 2 cabs, I don't know if it matters if one's pushing as the other one's pulling. I guess it doesn't matter, but who knows? There might be something. I don't know. Who cares? I just did it the way Marshall does it. So I hooked it all up, put the back on with 4 screws, whatever, 4 or 5, just to put it together. I didn't want to button the whole thing up and then find out that it didn't work or whatever. And I tried it out, and it sounds awesome. I'm totally psyched.